The year is 2025. We have witnessed a renaissance of this franchise via the movies and the games. With the release of Sonic Frontiers and Shadow Generations, I think it's safe to say now that we're entering a golden age of this franchise, and in this video I'm going to be sort of exploring what we could expect from the future of Sonic, how the movies will impact the games and vice versa, and where I see things going in the near and far future, and we'll be covering some rumors such as the Sonic Heroes remake. So, starting out with the Heroes remake, what do I really want from this? How do I want this, if it's true, to impact the franchise and change things going forward into this new era, this new golden age? For me, I think the most important thing is multiple playable characters. I've said this before in previous videos. That's one of the reasons I love games like Sonic R, Sonic Heroes itself, Sonic 06, despite its flaws, especially Project 06, can't stress that one enough. Those games make me realize that multiple playable characters are something ultimately that I think everyone wants to see, and that is really important for keeping the franchise fresh, unique, and instead of relying on these weird alien wisps, we can just have other characters have these other powers and abilities so that the developers have a lot of different ways they can spice up the gameplay, because these characters have so many different types of powers and abilities, and there's always room for something new, as we've seen with Shadow Generation. So with Heroes and it having a remake, what I'd hope to get out of that is that having multiple playable characters that are all on screen, like two of them as NPCs, one of them as a player character, and you swap between the three of them. I think if they take that concept and apply it to something like Frontiers, something in an open world setting where you would need for some areas a flight character or a character who can climb and dig, or a character who can run really fast to get up the ramp, someone who can generate enough momentum to be able to reach areas, you know, like the classics, and well, I guess what the adventure games attempted to do, but they didn't exactly have enough momentum to actually dictate the level design and gameplay. They still relied heavily on dash pads, dash panels, whatever you want to call them, and artificial means and ways, scripted events, going through loops in a scripted way. I think we're all sort of tired of this. Going through a loop is way more rewarding when you've built up the speed to do so, instead of it just being given to you every time, where you can just put the controller down and make a sandwich, Sam Procrastinate style. You shouldn't really have to do that, okay? Like it's just not good, you know? So we don't want any more automation, and I think momentum and physics would be definitely what I want to see come out of this Heroes remake, as well as multiple playable characters. If they can fix those pinball physics, especially in the casino zones, that would be amazing, okay? Heroes as a game already ranks pretty high for me. I really like the game and I love it conceptually. I feel like it has a lot of potential. I don't love all of it though. Like there's a lot of padding, there's a lot of levels that overstay their welcome, there's level design that just, you know, is questionable, lots of glitches. But overall, I really enjoy the experience, and I think seeing that game get a remake, it's the perfect one to choose. There's nothing really to lose. The game's reputation is not necessarily pristine, but it's also not like in the gutter. Its reputation is very mixed, and I think for this reason, it's less risky for them to remake Heroes than to remake Adventure 1 or Adventure 2, and that is just the reality of it. So I don't mind this being the first remake if the rumor is true, and again, a lot of things are pointing to this, so that's why we're talking about it. If it turns out that it's canceled or it was never getting made, then so be it, you know, but we can still dream, right? And I think that's a part of the hope for the future with Sonic in general, is that you're kind of hoping for something to really like come through and take something that's super outdated and make something incredible with it that changes the franchise moving forward. That's the most you can hope for out of a remake, other than it just being the same game but prettier. You want it to be changing the direction of the franchise for the better. And I think multiple playable characters, as I've stated multiple times over the course of this channel and all my videos I've made on stuff like this, and why I love games like Sonic R, for example, it allows you to play the same game in the same levels multiple times. It increases replayability. It allows you to connect more with the game and feel it out more with all these different characters, some having flight, some having a specific type of skill, some being able to enter into certain rooms throughout the level that other characters can't, you know, stuff like that, that just encourages replayability and encourages exploration is what makes Sonic Sonic. that's what we all grew up on. That's why we love Sonic 3 and Knuckles. That's why we love all these classic and adventure games. It's like because they allowed you to explore these levels with different characters and their own abilities, and they may have not always got it right. I still think the treasure hunting levels, they can be fun, but they are not my go-to. And I think most people would agree that that's not like when you boot up the game, that's not the first level you go and play. It's usually City Escape or Radical Highway or something like that, right? The first level you go and pick is not going to be Aquatic Mine or Pumpkin Hill or anything like that. It just isn't, you know? So I think remakes for all of these games are needed, but if Heroes is what we're going to get first, then so be it. I think that's a great start, and it introduces the chaotics, which is a plus, both for the movies if they end up doing that, and for that cast of characters that just gets underutilized all the time. And it would be definitely great to see them in a story that has a little bit more going on in it, you know? And I think that we've always wanted to see that. So that's my hopes for the Heroes remake in terms of what it can do for the gameplay, what it can do for future stories. I think definitely we should see an expanded version of like how Neo Metal Sonic, I say expanded, but we didn't even get to see it to begin with, so scratch that. I'd like to just see how this happened, right? How Neo Metal Sonic took over Eggman's operation, took over his egg fleet, all that kind of stuff. And to have a much more expanded story in general. I mean, Heroes has just got that perfect style of like, it's not quite classic Sonic styled, and it's not quite the more realism style we've seen in the adventure games. It's like a mix of both. And I feel like Heroes is this happy medium, and it has some of the best design levels. Seaside Hill fucking slaps, okay? I don't get that excited about levels, but I'm just saying some of my favorite, most iconic, most nostalgic levels are from Heroes. Those skyboxes alone ooze so much life and vibrance, and everything just felt so magical. And I know it's probably some of it's from me being a kid and experiencing all these games like for the first time at a young age, and everything just feeling more magical at that point. But I swear there's something about the art style, and like I just love the mix of classic and realism for Sonic style. Like you get those colorful, vibrant, very Sonic-like environments, but you get them set in the real world in a way that's so satisfying. Those giant mushrooms in Frog Forest, like, it's just so iconic. It's like, you almost can't even believe it's Earth, that this isn't Sonic's world, but it is Earth, you know? And you're like, wow, this is an interesting version of Earth. And I don't know, the way it paints the world of Sonic, I think is just, it's so nostalgic for me. I don't know why. It's some weird feeling. It's the same feeling I get when I think about Sonic R, another game I grew up with on the Gems collection that really just made an impression on me and gave me this weird nostalgic feeling like I'd been there before, you know? So let me know if you guys can relate to that, by the way, or if I'm just a psycho. Moving forward, on to the next one. Let's talk about the Frontier sequel, or whatever that is, right? We know that this game, according to Kishimoto, is going to have momentum based on like the feedback they've been getting from the fans. They've been using that to sort of guide how they're going to move forward with this Frontiers gameplay style. I don't even really see this next Frontiers game as a sequel because it is going in such a different direction, introducing momentum, something that's been absent from the series since the Boost era. So I'm really excited to see how they're going to tackle all the feedback that they've got from everyone, how they're going to implement that into the future games. That's definitely one of the most exciting things, is that usually they don't listen to what the fans have to say, so they actually did this time. So I'm curious if they're actually going to keep their word and do what they said they were going to do and add momentum and design the levels around momentum and actually have this Sonic gameplay formula evolve, because it's still in the Boost game era. It hasn't got out of that era, and I think until it does fully, you know, we stop relying on that. We stop relying on the 2D sections as well. Like, as soon as we can get away from that, I think this franchise is going to be in a much better place, and we'll actually feel as if we're in the next era. I feel like Frontiers is still hanging on to a lot of things, and this is normal, but it's still hanging on to a lot of elements that are from the previous Boost era, and it's not letting go fully. It still thinks it has to be a Boost game, and Shadow Generations doesn't exactly help this problem. It kind of exacerbates it. It kind of makes it worse, because now there's this expectation of like, we'll still get Boost games, right? Like on the side, we'll still get them. And I'm not sure if that's the case. They've been very clear that this is a one and done type of thing, that they just did this for the Year of Shadow, and they also just did this for the Generations remaster that they were probably going to do at some point anyway, and they're just doing it now so they can do this idea. It ended up working out, but I think that they need to go back to the drawing board and be like, all right, what really is the next 10 years of this? Like, we know it's open world, we know it's kind of what we did in Frontiers, but like now there's momentum. Now there's probably going to be, based on what we've seen in the Final Horizons Origins DLC, multiple playable characters being introduced. And if the Heroes remake is true, then that only further proves my point that multiple playable characters are coming back in a major way, and they're maybe this time here to stay. I mean, that would be the hope, is that like if they are brought back, it's not just for one project, they just do it for all their future projects. This is the hope, right? Because if you look at the classic titles and how this whole franchise started to begin with each game there was a new character introduced that added another angle to the gameplay style, the core gameplay style, which is Sonic's gameplay, right? So with Tails, it's like you can fly now. With Knuckles, it's like you can climb and latch onto walls, and you can also break through walls to reach hidden areas, and that totally changed up the gameplay. I think the next step is like, okay, we'll keep adding more characters with crazier and crazier abilities that totally change the game, so you could play the same level but have a totally different experience, or different levels that take place within the same location and have different experiences, sort of like Sonic 06. But we want to see more playable characters, and so that is also something that I really want to see out of this Frontiers sequel or spiritual successor, whatever you want to call it. Now, one more thing I wanted to mention on the topic of a sequel to Frontiers, and that is Angel Island. Please, if it's not this game, then at some point, I mean, we're in the open world era of the games now. If we could just have a game where you could explore an open world version of the entire map of Angel Island, I would die happy. I would die happy, and that is the end of that. I mean, imagine how cool that would be. Like an accurate to scale version of Angel Island that you can explore all its different biomes and hidden little buildings and mountains and woods and jungle and all this different, the ice caps, Hydro City Zone or Hydrocity. I don't know, however you say that. I say it Hydrocity, but I don't know why I said Hydro City first. This is what happens. We can't mention this godforsaken place anymore without some crazy debate on how to pronounce the name. But yeah, it would be amazing to see these levels reimagined, like all the locations from Sonic 3, or just at least all the locations that exist on Angel Island, and just have them brought to life in a whole new way. Like I said, with Heroes art style, like taking that heightened realism, like it's keeping a realistic appearance, but it's allowing that classic vibe, that vibrant, slightly, ever so slightly wacky, you know, vibe to seep through the realism and make this, I guess heightened realism is the best way I can put it, type of feel to it. And I think in regards to the art style of this next game that I'd want to see, I feel like Frontiers was a little bit too bland, and I feel like most would agree with that. So that's all I want to say about that. Now, the last one is Crossworlds, and I already did make a video on Crossworlds speculating about what we could be seeing here. Look, it's one of two things. Either it's a multiverse focused thing that's like multiple different versions of the same character, and it's like this Prime related or unPrime related. I don't know. It's just that Prime was the only other one to do something like that. Maybe they bring in elements of Prime into the games. I don't know. It's just some people said that like there was a font or a logo or texture that was similar to Prime's logo, and I'm like, oh God, here we go. The little details, you know, that people pick up on is crazy. But I don't think that that means anything. My thinking was more so that this was like a All-Stars Racing transformed, mixed with Riders, mixed with Sonic R, and just like taking all those ideas of like on-foot racing, extreme gear racing, and kart racing into one game where you get to pick and choose whichever way you'd like to play with the character, whether they are on foot, in a car, or, you know, but that is incredibly ambitious. And I feel like when you look at the early development of All-Stars Racing, they actually did have the characters running on foot. Maybe not all of them, but I remember they were going to have Sonic on foot, at least in the original development, from what I've watched from like the development like documentary. And it's really fascinating if you go and watch that, you get to see how their idea sort of evolved over time. So I'm thinking like, what is the natural evolution from Transformed and Team Sonic Racing? I don't know, because Team Sonic Racing was not necessarily the right direction to go in my opinion, based on how successful Transformed was and how pretty much critically acclaimed it was when it came out, and still is such a fun game and still holds up visually. I don't see why they wouldn't try to go back and do something like that, but they're kind of doubling down on like, no, just Sonic characters, just Sonic characters. And I don't know if that's really strengthening Sega as a brand when they have all these amazing IPs and they don't want them to come together to collaborate for an event like a racing title or a fighting title. Last time we've seen a fighting game, it was like the 90s on an arcade machine, so probably not going to be seeing a new fighting game featuring Sega characters or Sonic characters for that matter anytime soon. I would love to be wrong about that. I would love to be wrong about that. You guys have no idea. I mean, right now we only have like Dragon Ball FighterZ mods to hold us over. Until we get more information, we're basically just throwing ideas into the void. You know, it really doesn't feel like there's anything concrete enough to tell us what this really is going to be. We know that it's going to have the same type of cars that we saw in TSR, based on the one that Shadow's driving in the trailer. So we know it's going to have cars, it's not going to be extreme gear, and it's not going to be the characters on foot, unfortunately. I know. I'm hoping that those are like available options in the game, because if it's not about crossing over the worlds of each of the racing titles and it's more about the crossover of some sort of multiversal event, like I said, or maybe this game is going to feature Sega characters and they just don't want to put it in the title for whatever reason. I don't know. Sega and Sonic All-Stars Racing is kind of a mouthful, but at the same time, Sonic Racing Cross Worlds is also its own mouthful that doesn't make any sense. And the Cross World thing is so throwing me off because it's not Sonic Racing Multiverse. It's not Sonic Racing World Grand Prix. It's not Sonic Racing. It gives us nothing. So speculating on this is fun, but it's like the least concrete thing. Weirdly enough, I would know more of what to expect from a Heroes remake than I would Sonic Racing Cross Worlds, because the racing games have just been going downhill ever since Transformed, meaning Transformed was like the last good one in my opinion, and TSR was such a disappointment to me personally and to so many. And it's certainly not a bad game, it's just didn't know what it wanted to be, and it was trying to lean more into a massively multiplayer thing, but didn't really fully commit to like being massively multiplayer or being like more single player / co-op. I don't know. But anyway, that's all I wanted to say in this video. Thank you guys so much for watching. I appreciate if you've made it all the way through to the end of this video. Now that you're here, I can give you a little update on Sonic Doomsday Reimagined Episode 0, which is in development. It is almost done. There's some more animation to do, some more voice work to do, maybe a few touch-ups in the dialogue here and there, but other than that, it's coming along very nicely, and I'm very excited for you guys to see it, of course. And Sonic Cybernetics Episode 7 finale is also in the background, kind of in development, you know, like getting stuff set up for that for when I finish this episode 0. So another thing I wanted to just drop is that the two episodes, even though they're so far apart from each other in terms of when they take place, they do have a connecting thread. There is going to be some element that connects this episode to Cybernetics finale. As for when you can expect the Cybernetics finale, it's still going to come out this year. It's just probably going to be pushed to later in the year since I unexpectedly had to move. And so I'm going to be moving to Nevada. Initially, I came to Florida from California. So now I'm like going back all the way over to the West Coast. And so it's going to be a pretty big move. I don't want to get too much into it, but yeah, my time is very strained right now. And I'm trying to get this episode done before I move in early April. So thank you guys so much for watching again. I'll see you in the next video, creators. Peace out.